Before I even introduce this video, I'm going to jump right ahead to this topic so that you can do the same in the future if you have any problems with naming web files. So if you always do these first four things, you will never run into trouble, has been my experience. So never start your file name or folder names for web with a number. You can use a number in there, but just don't let it be the first thing. Do not start with a capital. And again, you can use a capital in the name, but don't start it with a capital. So both of these have to do with starting. Do not use spaces or any other special characters. So if you need space to help it you identify your file names, we'll talk about ways to do that. In fact, the first one here is by using an underscore instead of the space. That's what an underscore looks like. The way that you make one is you hold down the shift key and the hyphen key. So if I just press the hyphen key, I get this, but if I hold down the shift key and press the hyphen key, I get that, which is an underscore. So because you do not use spaces, you either use underscores, so in which case your file name might look something like this, like you'd have a word here, followed by an underscore, then maybe another word, underscore, and then whatever the file extension is. Some people like to, instead of doing the underscores, they like to use what's called camel casing, which is every new word starts with a capital so that it has, like the bumps on a camel's back, the new words stick out. But refer back to this rule up here, number 2, do not start with a capital. So notice the first letter is lowercase, and of course, same thing here too, right? Now, you may say, hey, I've done stuff in the past and I didn't stick to all these rules and it worked for me. Well, that's fine. But if you stick to all these rules, you'll be safe in almost every case. And I've seen websites fail just because someone named the index, the main page of the website, which we'll talk about in just a minute, with a capital I. Okay, so now that that's over, let's jump back up and let me say hello. Okay, so we are right here. HTML website video number 1. So this assumes you're working on the HTML website project for one of my classes. And since this is the first video for a project, let me just start out and tell you that this video is just to assist you. It's not to take place of classroom time. I want to keep these videos short so that you can go back to them and use them as you run into problems, not having me tell you, what an HTML tag is. But I will try to point you to where you can find that information very quickly as we go, so it can actually be kind of a classroom in the box type situation here. All right. So for example, one of the big things that we'll use a lot is the w3schools.com, and I'll try to point you to the topic that we're on where you can find, what we're currently working on to either expand your knowledge on it or just review your current knowledge that you might need for what we're working on. The other thing that I'm going to do in most cases is present the material from very general to specific, which means I may skip a lot of things that are important to your final project. So you have to take responsibility for that one and not assume that just because the website's working, at the end of video 2, that you don't need to go ahead and watch video 3 to figure out how it's supposed to work properly. So what that means is I may do something like skip the doc type thing at first. The doc type declaration, and then I'll add it later. But I don't want to start talking about something that's kind of actually a boring topic. I'd rather get in and we start making a website together and we kind of say, hey, this is fun. Let's keep going, and then we'll cover the little details later. The other thing that I'm going to try to do is keep from repeating videos that I have already made. So like defining a site, you'll probably see me do it in this video, but I'm not going to explain it because there was an entire video made for that. So with that in mind, let's get started. Here's our starting point, as we do indeed need to go and define our site, which means creating a folder on the desktop. And everything you turn into me will be saved in this fashion: last name, underscore, first name, some type of descriptor. Now, you could, of course, change it to this later, but why not just work on it like this from the start? So I'm going to call this Gonzalski Steve underscore HTML site. Then I'm going to open up Dreamweaver and I'm going to define that site, giving it the same. And go hunt for it. Okay, we're up and running. Next step here, create a new HTML5 page. And before we make this first page, this would be a good time to make sure that we're all looking at the same stuff together so that it's easy for you to find things as I mention them. So we're gonna, up here in the top right, be in beginner mode, and we're going to select it again and reset beginner mode so that your screen and mine looks the same. To make a new document in Dreamweaver, you go File, New. We want an HTML5 document, so we're going to make sure that New Document is selected. HTML is the document type, and that under document type HTML5 is what's listed. That should all be pretty much defaults for you. Don't have to worry about anything else right now. Click on Create. Now, if you go back to your file structure here, nothing is here yet because you haven't saved it. We'll take care of that in 1 second. But if you go back over here, we want to change this view so that we're in split. So what we're going to see is code here, and then in the other screen, we're going to see what things will look like on a site. Now, first of all, you may see this where you see the code on the left and the website on the right. Either way is fine. Sooner than later, save your files. So I'm going to go File, Save. Save or Save As will work the same because it's the very first time. But the first thing you want to do is make sure that where is pointed to your file, and it should be because that's one of the main reasons of setting up a site in Dreamweaver. If it's not at this point, you probably should get with me and figure out why it wasn't. If I'm not available, obviously go back, watch that video on defining sites because you probably did something wrong in there. Now, almost always you name the very first page of your website is index, and only index. And notice it has a lowercase I, and it may sound like I'm being sarcastic or something here, but a lot of times people think it's okay to start over and name the next one index 2. It is not. The very first page of the website, like 99% of the time, is named index.html. Okay, so then we click Save. And now look over here in our Files panel, and we can see that we have our first folder in here. Now, some of you are going to hate me for this, but very first step we're going to do is come over here, select all of the code that Dreamweaver so nicely made for us, and we're going to delete it. The reason being, I know this is not a code writing class, but these basic things that I'm going to show you for about the first 3 weeks of class are going to be very helpful to you at some point if you do some web design. Even if you are only the front-end designer that makes things, at some point you're probably going to want to put them up on the web, and little tiny things can go wrong that if you don't know this basic stuff, you'll be in the hands of having to beg some coder to come over and help you figure out what's wrong, and it'll take them all the 2 minutes to figure out that some file name was wrong or wrong location. So just trust me, it's good for you. Now, the first thing we want to do is look at some basic information on what we are about to do, and I like the W3 Schools for that. So we'll go to the W3 Schools, and so that we're all starting in the same place, I'm going to just be at w3schools.com. This website updates quite frequently, so it may not look like this when you go there. Even the menu system might not be the same, but if you just apply a little bit of common sense and get to basically, I'm going to learn HTML, find that in the system, click on it, And then you should be at a thing right here where it's the actual HTML tutorial, takes you through like a home and then introduction and so on and so on. And I'll try to point out where I am here each time. So where I want to be right now is on the introduction page under the HTML tutorial. And I would suggest that if you haven't already explored this, you hit pause, read exactly where HTML got its name. You can look at that quick example there. I'd probably read this. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time with you right now on this. And in fact, we are going to do this right here for us. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with your project per se, but it's a great place to start and get this down, and let me point out some really important things. So HTML tags, and that's the key word here is tags. That's what we're going to be writing, are keywords surrounded by angle brackets. So let's make one. Here's a generic example, but let's make a real one. We'll go back to Dreamweaver, start out with the left angle bracket, which is just above the comma on most computers. And the tag that we want to use in this example is a heading tag. And that starts with an H, and then it's either a number 1 through 6. Now we'll use the H1 tag because that's the biggest one. And you can see that Dreamweaver is being quite helpful to us here. It's already saying, oh, do you want one of these H tags? I see you typed in an H, so you must want one of these. So we could just come over here, double click, and Dreamweaver will finish typing that in. If it's a big tag, that can save us a lot of time. Now, we do need to close it so that we're following exactly what you see over here. So here is your first tag. We have the opening angle bracket, the closing angle bracket, and then we have the keyword. Our keyword was just H1. Now, one of the most important things in HTML coding is that 99% of the time your tags come in pairs. And if you forget to close them, you will have problems. So my advice to you is, if you can, close the tag before you have a chance to forget. So before we even put the content in between the two tags, we're going to close them. So I'm going to type in my left angle brackets, which sometimes you'll hear me refer to these as carets. So that'd be synonymous. Now, if you notice over here, the closing or the end tag starts with a /. In Dreamweaver, because it's friendly and it realizes we have a tag here that hasn't been closed, as soon as I type that /, the little guy under the question mark, it automatically puts that H1 in there for me. So I have my opening and closing tag, and then now I'm going to put some content in here, and I'll go with the ever popular hello world. And I can go up here and hit this refresh bar, and as soon as I do that, now Dreamweaver is showing me what this should look like on a website. And you'll see that this is not 100% accurate, but it's not bad. And if we take this copy, so I just highlighted all this, hit Command C to copy, Command V to paste, and we change these H1s to the highest number H we have, which is an H6, you'll see that that's still a headline tag, but it's much smaller. So I'm going to refresh up here again, and so there's a big headline, small headline. So just want to really emphasize this. Most tags have an opening and a closing tag. Close your tags before you can forget to. So I'll end this video here with an opening and a closing tag, an opening and a closing tag, and some super basic stuff. And then in the next video, we'll start on your actual HTML site project.